Hi guys, this is Jerry again with another Lightroom update. Just wanted to take you through some of the global tools and a little workflow, or kind of how I use it. So let's get started with this whole thing. Now you can come back and refer to this, and I'm hopefully between my little Lightroom videos and also the official Adobe Lightroom videos, you'll have a pretty good handle on this program before long. So here we go. Let's get started. So here we go. I've got an image up in Lightroom in the Develop module. This is a photograph of a couple of rocks. It was done at sunset, so the lighting is kind of really interesting. This is kind of why I did it, because of these two golden rocks. Look at the way the light is, sun going down is hitting these things. But yet in the shadows we have this really blue. It's already starting to get a little kind of twilighty blue back in here. So it's kind of a cool little combination of two different type of lighting effects, I guess you'd call it, at once. Now to do this image in the Develop module, first I'm going to open up the histogram so I can see what's happening with the exposure values here. And I can see that I've got some clipping in the shadows up here. Although I don't see a lot of blue stuff popping up. I see one little tiny speck there. If I turn this off, you probably turn it on and off. Okay, I could probably get away with that little shadow up here. And nothing up in the highlights here. Matter of fact, if anything, it's probably a little bit underexposed. Although it looks like it was underexposed on purpose. I don't know if I'd want to brighten up the image, if that would help it at all. I think the whole purpose here is to show the shapes of these two golden, almost triangular shaped rocks here, and to downplay the background, or to kind of surround them with a darker value so that they pop out at you. So where do we start here? Well, we're going to start with camera calibration down here. So the first thing I do is to make sure I have set this properly. I'm using a raw file here. This has been converted to DNG. We're working with a copy here. So the raw file has been converted when I imported it into Lightroom. So down here in camera calibration, I've got all kinds of choices I can use here. Let's show you what camera landscape looks like. That's a little kind of orange. The lighting is very difficult here at sunset because you get two different types happening. Here's camera neutral. That's kind of funky, not too bad. But let's go stay with good old Adobe Standard. That's what my camera was set at, 1998 Adobe. And when I shot this, I'll open up the basic up here. When I shot this, I did the color balance. And so I've sort of customized this when I made the shot inside my camera. I set custom white balance, and there you go, because I knew it was a difficult situation. So here we go. Here, I'll show you why. So let's use some of these preset things, okay? Let's put good old auto here. Look at this. Yuck! Good Lord, it's not even close to what I was doing there. All right, here's daylight. Orange. Gosh, that's because the light was so wild. So you see, there is no, there's really no substitute for doing a custom white balance while you're there. So there you go. Flash, maybe that'd be a lot like daylight, So let's go back to as shot. I like that best out of all of these. That really was what I was seeing. Okay, now we get down to these tools here, and I'm going to close up this basic just for now. As we work our way up here, I wish these were laid out in a different order, but such as it is, they're not. So after doing camera calibration, I usually go up to lens corrections and open that up. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the profile for the actual lens that I used. And what this does, you'll see, it takes away. It flattens out the lens. Also, it does two things. You can see how it becomes flatter versus rounder when it's turned off. And also, look at how it lightens up on the edges, too. That's because all of your lenses expose a little less to the outside than they do to the middle. And so this compensates for all of that. Now, if I couldn't find the lens that I used here, I would go down in here and find it over here. Another thing you can do within this lens corrections, and I don't need it here on this basic this little basic thing. This is something Lightroom 5 added, which is phenomenal. This will correct for converging parallel lines. When you're doing a vertical, say you're looking up at a building, this will help you correct some of those. I'm not going to go into this here because I think I've included an Adobe film that explains this very well, where Julianne Cost goes into this in detail. So let's go back to profile here. I'll close that up since we got that on. Now we'll go up to basic, where you spend 99.9% of your time up here. So actually, I want to show you the difference between using basic and using the tone curve today. Some people prefer the tone curve. So I just want to show you in this little video here. Not going to mess around with the white balance. As I said, that's done. I can look at, I'm kind of assessing the image here, trying to think of what I was trying to do or what I want to say with this thing. And I can see that I've got these two shapes here. And what I want to do is to separate these shapes from the background. I think it's doing pretty well around here, just because of the nature of the lighting. But up here, where the sun was also hitting, it seems to be a little bit of a little distracting, a little bit of competition in terms of attention for the eye. So actually, I'm going to have to burn this corner, I suspect, to get this darker than this area here. I'm going to have to darken this separately, and I will do that in the next video, by the way. So this one I just want to kind of go with, show you how some of the techniques that I use for working my way through Lightroom. So here we go. So watch this. Here's a little trick I learned reading George DeWolf. This is one of George DeWolf's tricks. He's a master of Lightroom, master of digital imaging. He says, taking the saturation, you get a color image, reduce the saturation to -100, so you're dealing with just kind of a black and white image. And by the way, that's different from converting it to black and white. There's the conversion to black and white. See that? Let's go back to color. So it's still a color image, it's just all the color's been taken out. So, my goal here is a color image, not a black and white image. So I definitely want to work at it as a color image. So now we get down there and I can kind of assess some of these individual areas here in terms of what I want to do. Now we basically have 6 controls over here, or 6 sliders you can work with. You can either highlight them over here and use the up or down commands on the cursor on your keyboard. That works pretty good. Here's your contrast going here, and so forth. Or you can drag the slider sideways. Depends on how you like to work. Now I'm looking at this image and I'm thinking, the exposure really is not too bad. If I give it more exposure, the whole thing brightens up, and it kind of brightens up that shadow too much, which I don't really want to do. I want to create a separation. So I'm going to leave my exposure alone. How about contrast? What happens? Contrast should open up some of those shadows. Right? See that? Or close them. You see how much easier it is for me anyway, to assess the values that I'm looking at without dealing with the color. Color kind of is a subtle thing, and it really messes me up. So taking the color out before I start working on it really kind of helps me out a lot with the image. What happens with these highlights here? Highlights would be these kinds of areas on the rock here. If I sort of lower that, see that rock's coming down lower, some of those highlights. You get a little more texture. Right? If I come up with this way, it gets blown out a little bit more. So I don't know, maybe a little less highlight would be kind of nice. Shadows would be these areas in here. So if I wanted to increase the shadow values, I could do it like that. That way they're a little, you can see that they're still separate here. They're just kind of closed right up. And you can see all this clipping that's occurring up here. So I'm going to give a little more to the shadows here to kind of even these out a little bit. The whites are the very bright highlights here, and you want to be careful you really don't have a problem. The whites you can use to reduce your clipping areas on the whites. It works great for that. So I don't really have much. You can see that it doesn't really have, it kind of brightens up the highlight areas here. I don't think it does a lot to the image. I might just give it maybe just a touch. Blacks, I can get rid of these clipped off black areas by adding just a little bit of black here. See, they disappear. Boop. Just like that. So there really are no solid blacks in the image here, even though there's a lot of darks and whites and a lot of contrast. Clarity is kind of a sharpening slider. So watch when I move this clarity over, how kind of more granular everything appears, texture-wise and so forth. Vibrance, I really can't do much with the vibrance until I get the color back up. Let's see how we did here. Let's bring the color back up to 0 to 0. That's where we were right there. So if I wanted to make it a little bit more vibrant, I don't know why, but I want to be careful I don't go overboard with the gold and the blue happening here. I mean, you can go overboard, yuck, or you can go underboard. So I think just maybe a touch more. Well, actually, I think 0 is pretty good, because it was pretty outrageous when I was photographing this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered. So there we go. So there's just some quick little things, just for dealing with these areas. And if you want to see what it looked like before, you just hold down on hit the backslash key. I'm sorry, on your keyboard. So there you go. There's the back. There's what I started with. There's what I ended up with. See that? That's before. That's after. So it's a much nicer image, and it's starting to come into its own. It needs some other things that I haven't gone into, but I just wanted to kind of give you these quick little basic things here. Now, another way of approaching this, and some people like to work this way, prefer to work this way. I'm going to go back and I'm going to zero out all of my values here that I did. All of my hard work I'm going to get rid of. It's exhausting work, I tell you. No, it's fine. Okay, so we're back to 0 there, and I'm going to close the basic, and I'm going to open up this tone curve here. Some people prefer to work with a tone curve. And what this is, I explained in a previous video, this splits up your controls into 4 different areas. Highlights, highlights, lights, and then, what are these called? Shadows and darks down here. I don't know why darks is in front of shadows, but hey, what can I say? Or maybe shadows are down there. You know, I don't know what their termination is here. But here's the cool thing about this tool. I can use this little rig up here. If I click on that little guy to make him active, I go over to my image and I say, gee, I want to darken that there. If I hold down on the mouse and drag it down, watch what's happening to the curve over here. Oh my goodness. It's like, gee, instant on. So I'll come over here and say, gee, that shadow's kind of dark. Let's open that shadow up a little bit. Watch what's happening to the curve. Amazing, huh? It's kind of getting a little dark here. Let's get these guys a little bit. This corner down here ought to get a little dark. You see how you can parse this out? So we come up here. So you're right on the image working. You can also move these sliders around too to do the same thing. But boy, this is a fantastic tool. And there's a bunch of different things within Lightroom that utilize the same idea of clicking on this and then coming over here. And by the way, if I wanted to let's get these all back to 0 again. If I wanted to work on this the same way I did on the when I used the basic outline, I could open up basic here. I could always desaturate it like that, open up my curve, and do my thing. And then go in here. Boom, and do the same thing. Pretty cool. Huh? Pretty cool. So there's just a couple of quickie little global tools to use in Lightroom as part of your workflow. There'll be a whole bunch of other little things I do, but I want to remind you guys that when you're working on the image, I'm just going to click on reset to go right back to the beginning. I want to remind you guys when you're working on an image to work with the overall aspects of it first, the greater aspects of it, before you go into all these different areas. I mentioned that this one needs to be darkened around here. It needs a little work in order for these 2 rocks to really pop out at you. I might have to do something with this guy right here, and I think I could. And probably in the next video when I show you how to use these little selective tools right up here, these 3 guys right here, I think this might help you out a little bit more. So, until next time, this is Jere, and over and out.